air it out. Down the field. Catch and a touchdown.
It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Here's your host, Nick Kosko.
Welcome inside the College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. We are presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu. As always, welcome to another week of college football as we lead you into Conference Championship weekend next weekend. So we're almost there, folks. But the college football season, I can't believe it, on this day of December 12th is almost over already. I mean, can you believe it? The bowl season is coming around the corner. I know there's a bunch of bowl games that have been canceled already, so we have less than usual, but we're still going to have some sort of postseason. Teams like Boston College already decided to say that they're not going to play in a bowl game this year. They're going to opt out of one. And then you look at what's ahead for the college football playoff on New Year's Day. So we are just, roughly 3 weeks away from that. And then our college football playoff national championship on that following Monday, of course. So it's going to be a wild end to the college football season, considering we basically have our matchups set for the most part in the conference championship games throughout all the major conferences, of course, and then you really didn't have too much shakeup in the college football playoff rankings this past week, aside from you really look at Coastal Carolina moving up to number 13 over BYU. They dropped to 18, so they basically flipped spots. USC made a big jump up to 15, but they're only 4-0 on the year. And then other than that, Oklahoma State dropped 7 spots to 22 after their latest loss. Iowa State, maybe the biggest surprise, moving up 2 spots to the 7th spot in the rankings, just behind Florida and A&M on the outside looking in of the top 4. But Iowa State 8-2, they're above Cincinnati, who's 8-0, and a group of 5 school at number 8, and Georgia moved down to number 9, 6-2. Miami's still stagnant at number 10 at 8-1. So that's really where we are with the college football playoff rankings. But the biggest news that happened this week was what happened with the conference championship game starting next week. So it's not even something that's going to happen this weekend, but next weekend, and that is Ohio State. And that is the Big Ten's decision to basically play favorites with Ohio State. Now, people are thinking, well, what does that mean, play favorites? Well, I mean, everybody knows, right, that Ohio State is the best team in the Big Ten. It's hard to convince anybody else otherwise, even though Ohio State's only played 5 games this season. But, I mean, if you really look at it, Ohio State is far and away the best team, and you can make an argument that Indiana was the closest team, but now without Michael Penix Jr., their starting quarterback, if those two teams played each other again, do you really think Indiana would keep up? Now, granted, Indiana without Penix Jr. beat Wisconsin the other week, 14-6, and showed great defense. But in a rematch, Ohio State wins. I would say 10 out of 10, 10 times out of 10. So looking at the Big Ten, Ohio State does sneak in, despite not reaching that 6-game minimum, which was a rule the Big Ten put in place at the start of the season when they eventually came back in late October to play this 8-game regular season truncated schedule. So, looking at the Big Ten, a lot of teams have not played all 7 games leading up into the final week. And, of course, we know Ohio State, Michigan is canceled this weekend. For those who were living under a rock for today, there is no Ohio State, Michigan, unfortunately. The first time since 1917 that we will not have the game. And ultimately, that's what really stinks. They're not going to get this weekend because Michigan was down to one more game. They only missed 1, but they were down to one more game. They weren't going to get back to 500, but you never know. Could this be the year out of all years where Jim Harbaugh's squad is down their rotten luck this year, and all of a sudden they upset Ohio State, and then it just sends shockwaves through college football, knocks Ohio State out of the playoff run, but they're still going to the Big Ten Championship anyway. And here's where we come full circle. Even if this game was played today, this is why the Big Ten made the argument saying, well, we're going to put them in anyway despite not reaching that 6-game minimum. And they didn't even reschedule any games throughout the week for the Big Ten to give Ohio State a different game. The Big Ten's reasoning for saying, well, we're going to put you in anyway despite not reaching 6 games, because even if you lost to Michigan somehow and you finish 5-1, you have the head-to-head over Indiana. You're tied in the loss column, sure. Are you behind in the win column? Yeah, that's fine, but you already beat them head-to-head, so for argument's sake, we're going to put you in anyway. You were probably going to win anyway and go 6-0. So we're just going to put you in, and you're going to play Northwestern. So, I mean, out of all the teams in the Big Ten that have played 7 games, Indiana is 6-1. Penn State and Rutgers are 2-5. Iowa's 5-2, and that's it. Those are the only teams that have played all 7 games this year. Everyone else has played 6 or less. So the average was going down anyway, but they were never going to get in without reaching that 6-game minimum because the average was already over 6 in terms of total games played throughout the conference per team. So the Big Ten made that ruling, and some people are going to say, well, if Indiana was in that same situation, they would have not done that. They would have said, well, you didn't play 6 games, so sorry, you're ineligible. People are saying they're only doing it because it's Ohio State. Well, here's where I'll counter. And frankly, I mean, I probably do agree with that statement, but when you look at, say if Indiana was in that same situation, they were the number 4 team, they were 5-0, Ohio State was 6-1, they're the number 12 team. At that point, do you really think Ohio State would actually get in the playoff if they already lost to Indiana? Think about it. If you're going to give me the argument that the Big Ten would have not done the same for a team like Indiana, riddle me this. Would a number 12 Ohio State team going up against a number 14 Northwestern team, let's just say Indiana's number 4, right, for argument's sake, but they're not allowed to go to the Big Ten championship game. So now you have number 12 Ohio State and number 14 Northwestern in your Big Ten title game. You mean to tell me the committee's going to look at Ohio State saying, okay, you won, say Ohio State wins the title. They're going to look at a 7-1 Ohio State team that beats number 14 Northwestern in the Big Ten title game and say, well, Ohio State, you're pretty good, but we're going to put you in the Final Four. Do you really think they're going to put them in the Final Four if they start out number 12? Seriously, just reverse the roles here. Indiana stays number 4, but they don't go to the Big Ten title game. Ohio State does. They're number 12. They beat Northwestern. They're 7-1. They move up to what? From 12 to 10 to 9? Ohio State's not going to jump from 12 to 4. So I get the reasoning. And that's only playing devil's advocate for the Big Ten. And granted, I don't approve what the Big Ten did at all this season, considering they're the first ones to cancel the year, making a rash decision while other Power 5 conferences, i.e. the SEC, ACC, and Big 12, decided to start pretty much on time in September and gave themselves leeway. And again, we knew there were going to be cancellations this year, so that's paid off for those conferences. For the Big Ten, it has not paid off. For the Pac-12, it definitely hasn't paid off. Your highest-ranked team is USC at number 15, and they've played 4 games this year. 4 games! Pac-12 already gave themselves no shot to make the college football playoff. Even if they got all 7 games in, which includes a conference title game, the Pac-12 was never getting in. So I don't approve what the Big Ten's done, and I don't approve that they set a threshold. I guess you kind of had to, so that rule is kind of arbitrary, but the fact that they canceled, they came back, and then they delayed coming back, they figured, all right, we're going to come back, and they announced that early October, but then they came back 3 weeks later. So no, I don't like the way the Big Ten's handled things at all for the season. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt when defending putting Ohio State in the title game. Now, granted, on the surface, it's like, well, Ohio State's number 4, right? So we as the Big Ten want the college football playoff money and exposure. So we're going to put our best team in there. I get all of that. We want to do whatever it takes to put our best team in the Final Four. Yes, I understand. But in reality, Ohio State probably beats Michigan anyway. And again, that's what they, as Herm Edwards used to say, you play to win the game. You have to take the field. You can't go by who wins on paper. But anybody looking at this game this year would say Ohio State's probably going to beat Michigan badly. They were a 30-point favorite according to Vegas for a reason, folks. That's how big that gap is between Ohio State and Michigan. So when you look at the Big Ten's decision, I'm fine with it. Only because Ohio State was probably going to win anyway. And again, they already beat Indiana. People seem to just brush that under the rug. I get the 6-game minimum was not met, but they already beat Indiana. If they did not play Indiana this year, then we have a different story if the Big Ten still made this decision without Ohio State playing and beating Indiana. That is entirely different. But they beat them head-to-head at their best. At Indiana's best, they beat them head-to-head. What more do you want? And realistically, if you kept Ohio State out, they could still make the playoff. They're still number 4. The committee still views them as a number 4 team, despite only playing 5 games. Who's in front of them, right? Undefeated Alabama, far and away the best team. Undefeated Notre Dame, they're 10-0. Number 3, Clemson's number 3 right now, folks, and they have 1 loss. They're only number 3 over Ohio State because they've played more games. But obviously the committee views a 5-0 Ohio State team better than other SEC 1-loss teams that could make the playoff anyway. Texas A&M is 7-1. Their only loss is to Alabama. Since that's shellacking to the Crimson Tide, Texas A&M has been one of the best teams in the country. Florida, 8-1. Their only loss is to Texas A&M. Otherwise, this team puts up 45, 50 points a game. It's one of the most explosive offenses, if not the most explosive offense in the country. Separate debate between them and Alabama in terms of offense, but still, the committee thinks they're better than those 2 teams. So what more do you want? They're obviously going to be better than Iowa State, who already has 2 losses. And of course, if you look at a matchup between Ohio State and Cincinnati, yeah, Ohio State's going to win that game probably 99 times out of 100. Georgia has 2 losses. Miami 8-1. Now their ranking aside, Miami probably should be higher anyway. But still, they're only losses to Clemson. But you look at, what more do you folks want? Even if Ohio State does not make the Big Ten title game, they're still the number 4 team in the country at 5-0. Let's just play that scenario right now. For those who are complaining still about Ohio State making the Big Ten title game despite not reaching the 6-game minimum according to the Big Ten's arbitrary rules, which they can change on the fly anyway, as we just saw this week. Let's just say it's Indiana, Northwestern, right, for the Big Ten title. Both have 1 loss. That's number 12 versus number 14. Let's just say, for argument's sake, because Indiana was the closest to Ohio State, it's their only loss, they win, right? They go 7-1. Indiana is now 7-1, the Big Ten champions. How do you rate them against a Oklahoma? Oklahoma's above them, folks. 7-2 Oklahoma. 7-2 Oklahoma and an 8-2 Iowa State, who are going to be playing in a Big 12 title game. They are above Indiana. Now, again, the committee's probably weighing the fact that Indiana, on the eye test, does not have Michael Penix Jr. That's a huge loss. If they still had their quarterback, do I think Indiana would be above where they are right now? Probably. They'd be 11 or 10, maybe even 9. Who knows? Because again, the only loss is to Ohio State, but you lost your quarterback. That affects things. Would Ohio State be in this situation if they lost Justin Fields? No way. No way. No way. Even without playing, the committee would drop them if they did not have Justin Fields. They would say Texas A&M, Florida, you guys have your quarterbacks. You guys didn't lose anybody important. You move on up. Ohio State, you drop. Maybe to 6, maybe to 7. Still a great team, but you lost your most important player. That's why Indiana dropped. All right? That's why Indiana is lower than teams like Oklahoma, Miami, Georgia, Cincinnati, Ohio, Iowa State, Florida, Texas A&M, all those teams. Especially Oklahoma, right below them. But you mean to tell me a 7-1 Indiana team is going to be... They're going to get that much argument? The committee obviously doesn't think they're better than Oklahoma or Iowa State. They'll jump the loser of that Big 12 title game, but what if Cincinnati wins the American Athletic Conference and goes 9-0? Don't forget, Tulsa's number 24 team. That's the conference championship game in that conference. You mean to tell me the committee's going to put Indiana over a undefeated Cincinnati team? If you can't even do that, you're not making the playoff anyway. The committee obviously thinks, and I failed to mention this, the committee and the Big Ten are not the same thing, by the way. They're 2 separate entities for those who are still complaining about Ohio State. The committee makes their own decisions, who they think they are the best who they think the 4 best teams are in the country. They obviously think Ohio State is one of them. For argument's sake, Alabama wins. Let's say even Notre Dame beats Clemson a second time. So it's Bama, Notre Dame, 1-2, right? Ohio State does not play a Big Ten title game. Clemson probably knocked out with 2 losses. Does Texas A&M slide up? Because they only lost to Alabama. Is Florida knocked out? Depending upon their loss to Alabama. They'd have 2 losses. Now, does Iowa State figure into the picture if they win the Big 12? What about Cincinnati now? Group of 5. All these teams, and of course Ohio State, they're only 5-0. The committee thinks they're one of the 4 best teams. There's Ohio State just slide up without playing a game. They could play on. Actually, I take that back. They would still play the same weekend as the Big Ten. Because remember, the Big Ten set up those rules this season where you have the Big Ten championship game, and then everybody else plays the team from the opposite division in the same place they are. So second place versus second place, third versus third, so on and so forth. So Ohio State would play somebody like Wisconsin or Iowa in that scenario. And if they win, they still play, they're going to go 6-0. They'll be 6-0. They would play another game. They would stay in action. They just wouldn't have a conference title, and they'd still be a better team than Indiana because they beat them head-to-head. Conference title aside. Ohio State probably still stays in. And then that 4th spot is up for debate between a 1-loss Texas A&M team and then a 2-loss Florida Clemson team, maybe a Big 12 champion in Iowa State, Oklahoma, and then an undefeated Cincinnati, hypothetically. No way Indiana gets any consideration whatsoever anyway. So, of course, the Big Ten is going to make a move to get their best shot to the playoff in the conference title games. It gives them more weight, gives them a better argument to play in the Final Four. So of course, the Big Ten, we're not shocked that the Big Ten made this move. And again, the flip side of it is, would the Big Ten have done the same thing for Indiana if the roles were reversed? I don't think so, but the Big Ten made the right move. Now, I will give the Big Ten credit if those roles were reversed, as I was getting into before. If Indiana was Ohio State this year at number 4, the Big Ten might have done the same thing because Indiana was the clear number 4 team in the country and the clear best team in the Big Ten. I think that then you would have the scenario where Indiana would be in Ohio State situation. They would get granted an exception, because they're the Big Ten's best shot to get to the playoff. It's all about money. It's all about getting your schools to the playoff. The committee itself does not want 2 and 2. They don't want 2 SEC teams and 2 ACC teams playing for a national championship. They want more diversity from these conferences. Forget the Pac-12. Pac-12 has been out. They're gone. Goodbye. They want to try to mix in the Big 12s. They want the Big Ten in there. You really want Bama, Notre Dame, Clemson, and Florida? Or Bama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Texas A&M? Down south they would. At least the big brand Notre Dame is in there, but they're an ACC team this year. 2 conferences. Ideally, because you have the Power 5 in a college football playoff, you'd want 4 of those Power 5 conferences. As much diversity as possible. So, in the end, I think the Big Ten would have weighted a decision similar to Ohio State if Indiana were in the Buckeyes' position. If Indiana was number 4 and they were that good, the Big Ten would have done the same thing. People don't want to look at it like that anyway, because Ohio State is Ohio State. They're the Buckeyes, the Ohio State, the big brand, the Big Ten's biggest asset, because Michigan stinks, Penn State stinks, Wisconsin not even in the conversation, Iowa, great brand for wrestling. Don't get me wrong, Iowa's a long-time Big Ten brand, but is Iowa Ohio State? If Iowa was undefeated, would the Big Ten want them in over Ohio State? Probably not, but if they got in, they would approve it. Iowa almost got into the playoff a handful of years ago when they played Michigan State for a Big Ten title. The Big Ten ultimately made the right decision, and that's what people have to get over. Get over it. Ohio State's in the Big Ten title game. They're probably going to shellac Northwestern, and that's not taking anything away from Northwestern. Northwestern's a fantastic football team this year. Northwestern is number 14 in the country. They have beaten everybody that comes their way except, I can't believe they lost to Michigan State. So, do you take them seriously? Rutgers beat Michigan State. I mean, folks, my Rutgers team, Rutgers, rebuilding, 2-5 on the year. They beat Michigan State. And Northwestern can't. And Northwestern would probably would blow the doors off Rutgers this year. I shouldn't say that. Northwestern would definitely beat Rutgers this year, the way they're playing. But they lost to Michigan State, and Rutgers could beat them? Come on. They blew out Maryland. They beat Iowa by a point. Now, here's something. If talking about the Big Ten championship game next week, if Northwestern goes the other way against Iowa, they beat them at 1 point. Iowa is in there, and then we're talking about probably a more competitive game between Ohio State and Iowa anyway. Beat Nebraska by 8. Nebraska's no good. Beat Purdue by 7. Wisconsin victory was big, 17-7. That was a big win. Great defense. But they followed out with a stinker against Michigan State, canceled against Minnesota. They have Illinois this week. The only thing the Big Ten screwed up in terms of this decision between Ohio State and Northwestern playing for a Big Ten title is that Ohio State is off this weekend. They did not reschedule a game for Ohio State, and Northwestern is still playing. While the ACC, meanwhile, did it probably right, as screwed up as it sounds, they intentionally, if Notre Dame / Clemson had any games this weekend, they already clinched spots. They said, cancel those games, you two stay isolated, stay COVID-free, and get ready for the ACC title game in 2 weeks. They did not do that for Northwestern. Northwestern still has to play Illinois. Is Northwestern beating down Illinois going to really improve their playoff chances? No. They virtually have none. Even if they beat Ohio State, they virtually have no playoff chance. So why let Northwestern play this football game rather than just cancel it and let them prepare for Ohio State for 2 weeks? That's what the Big Ten screwed up ultimately. Not the decision to put the Buckeyes in the title game. All right, we're going to step aside and take a quick break. On the other side, we'll talk more about today's slate other than, what's going on in the following week, and then we'll get into my picks later in the show. A couple of reminders for you. Of course, you can always follow me on Twitter at NickKosko59, NickKosko59. Be sure to follow the station on Twitter at 1490 SportsBet as well. Check out HarborJujitsu.com. Website is live. Check it out there for our schedules, photos, information. Of course, you can get your free trial class as well. Of course, Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, one of the best schools I've been to, of course, and it's located inside the Attila's Gym in Egg Harbor Township. All right, we'll step aside, take a quick break. Weekend slate coming up on the other side. It's College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Betting college football? You've come to the right place. It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Welcome back to College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. We are presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Attila's Gym in Egg Harbor Township. Be sure to follow them on Instagram and like them on Facebook. Check out the website, harborjujitsu.com. Check out photos, information, our class schedule, and be sure to look up or see what the information you can get for your free trial class. That's right, free trial class if you want to check it out and learn the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu and MMA striking as well. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at NickKosko59. Follow the station at 1490 SportsBet as well. All right, well, so we already went wax poetic about the Big Ten allowing Ohio State into the conference title game. And again, for those who missed the opening monologue, where you been, first of all? Second of all, it was the right decision, ultimately. All right, it was the right decision because if you weigh all the factors, Ohio State was going to get in anyway, win or lose against Michigan, which that game was canceled this weekend. They were going to get in. They were going to get in, win or lose. They already beat Indiana head to head, and if the roles were reversed, for those who are saying they wouldn't have done the same thing for Indiana, and I tend to agree with that because I don't really trust the Big Ten, but giving them the benefit of the doubt, the Big Ten, which is tough to do. If Indiana is number 4 in the country, same situation as Ohio State, beat them, beat the Buckeyes head to head, they're the best chance to get the Big Ten a representative in the college football playoff. The Big Ten would have done the same thing. It's as simple as that. It's all about getting your team to the playoff. We're the best shot you have because you don't want 2 SEC teams and 2 ACC teams running your top 4 this year. Because the College Football Playoff Committee will look at things a little bit more individually, particularly in this type of season. All right, this weekend's slate is, well, it's not that great, folks, but, what can you do? Only because we're already looking ahead to the conference title games next weekend, but so the things that have jumped out, Alabama, Arkansas, you might as well just not even look at this game because unless there's a monumental upset here, Alabama is going to just wipe the floor with Arkansas, even on the road. They'll probably pull Mac Jones and all the starters by, the third quarter. It opened 31 points, folks, on the road. We thought the Ohio State-Michigan spread before that game was canceled was big when Ohio State was a 30-point favorite at home. Alabama is a 31-point favorite on the road. On the road. The over-under is at 68.5. Alabama might put that up by themselves. Arkansas, okay, granted has done some good things under Sam Pittman this year, but the way Mac Jones, Najee Harris, John Mechie, Jalen Waddle when he did play, Devontae Smith, who's probably their best receiver anyway when you look at it in totality. What this team has done is ridiculous, and the defense has improved now over recent weeks. Current line for that game looks like what we have from William Hill, 32. 32. Over-under still 68.5. I wouldn't touch that. What if they're up by 35 at halftime, or even 42 at halftime? They pull their stars in the third quarter. Arkansas could score you a couple of cheap touchdowns. I don't trust that. No way. No way. Or how about this? Let's just say Alabama's up by 42 in the third quarter, right? They pull the starters. Arkansas gets a field goal. All right. It's fine. 39. You're still covering. Cheap late touchdown against the backups. You push. You don't necessarily lose money. You're not going to win anything either. So I'm going to stay away. I'm going to stay away from Alabama, Arkansas this week, folks. The most interesting SEC game. I mean, Florida LSU is always interesting, but again, LSU stinks this year. They're a shell themselves. More guys are opting out. Eric Gilbert, their star freshman tight end, opted out, and doesn't look that good because Ed Orgeron, everyone's favorite, go Tigers. He even commented, it was weird this week. He said, we would hope to have him back next year. Hope to have him back? What does that mean? He's only played 1 year. And he's not eligible for the NFL draft. He's a freshman. And it's a free year for everybody. Don't forget. This is a free year for everybody in all sports across college athletics. The NCAA granted a free year to everybody, so you don't lose a year of eligibility even if you play this year. We would hope to have him back. What does that mean? Everything's just breaking down fast in LSU. Now, are they going to rebound next year with less injuries and, guys probably won't? I mean, by next year we hope they have a normal season. Everyone has a year under their belt. Are they going to be better? New recruiting class coming in. Would they be better next year? I would think so, but they're not going to be 2019 national title good. But at least they'll be more competitive and not have a god-awful defense. I would hope Ed Orgeron fires Bo Pelini as soon as the season's over. We would hope to have him back. There's just a mess going on in LSU. So that game, for its brand appeal, is not going to be that interesting. I mean, if Florida doesn't win that game 45-10, then I don't know what's going on. The most interesting game this week, folks, is Georgia-Missouri in the SEC. For all you Southern folk out there who love this conference. Tennessee, Vanderbilt, no, I'm going to pass. Auburn, Mississippi State, I'm going to pass. Ole Miss, Texas A&M was postponed. Georgia, Missouri, because on paper, it's number 9 Georgia, number 25 Missouri. That's the most interesting game this weekend. How is that possible? You got to tell me. How is that possible? And Georgia is nearly a 2-touchdown favorite on the road. First of all, how Missouri got ranked is beyond me, actually, at 5-3. But then again, it's 2020. Let's not forget. But they're number 25 in the latest college football playoff rankings that came out this weekend. The teams that dropped were Wisconsin, because they're 2-2. Marshall dropped, Washington lost, so they dropped, and Oregon dropped as well. You say, Oregon? Why did Oregon drop? Well, lack of games. They already lost to Oregon State earlier in the year. And, oh, by the way, they lost again to Cal. They lost to Cal. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Mario Cristobal's team. Granted, I had nothing against Mario Cristobal or Oregon. It's just amazing. You play 5 games this year. Crappy Pac-12 schedule. The conference doesn't come back till November. And they've lost 2 in a row. So there you go. That's why Missouri snuck in. You see those teams that just dropped out. Fascinating to me. Missouri, while not that good, they've won 5 games this year. They're 5-3. Let's not rule out what they can do here. But let's go through their schedule real quick. Right? Who have they beaten? Why are they ranked? Why is this game intriguing now, all of a sudden? Well, Alabama beat them 38-19 to start the year. Okay, first game, Alabama at this point probably beat them, 52-10. But still, all right, not bad. 35-12 road loss to Tennessee. At the time, you're like, okay, Tennessee's got something going. Missouri might not be a good year. But then they beat LSU. Good win for Missouri, 45-41. But everyone knew LSU wasn't the same. Game against Vanderbilt postponed until later in the year. Beat Kentucky, 20-10. Okay, 2-2. Moving on. Florida. 41-17 loss. What the heck? Florida killed them. Game against Georgia postponed till this weekend. Edge South Carolina, a bad South Carolina team, 17-10. Shut out Vanderbilt, 41-0. Edge Arkansas, 50-48. So they've shown what they can do. Close game against South Carolina, blowout against Vanderbilt, and a shootout against Arkansas. They've shown you all three ways to win. It's now 3 in a row since the loss to Florida and the postponement against Georgia, and that game is now this weekend, and they're scheduled to take on Mississippi State next week during the Conference Championship weekend. So, in the end, I'm fine with it. Sneaking in, especially the other teams that dropped out. I'm fine with it, sliding them up. But they have a little something. Georgia, to me, you really don't know what they have. I get they're 6-2, and their only 2 losses are to Bama, the number 1 team, and Florida, the number 6 team. But they lost to both of them by double digits, 17 and 16 points respectively. Since that loss to Florida, their second of the year, they had their initial game against Missouri postponed. They just edged out Mississippi State by 7 points. Mississippi State has not looked the same since that opening weekend victory over LSU, where it's like, oh my God, Mike Leach, KJ Costello, 600 passing yards in one game. Oh my God, air raid taking over the SEC. No. Mississippi State is 2-6, folks. Come on. No, it's no good. It's no good. No good. And they beat South Carolina. Oh, whoop-de-doo. You beat South Carolina. Georgia to me does not deserve that number 9 ranking. They have good losses, but other than their good losses, who have they beaten? Mississippi State and South Carolina? Meh. Kentucky by only 11, only scoring 14 points. Decent, because the defense was elite that day. Tennessee, not a good win in retrospect. Auburn, good win in retrospect. Arkansas at the end of the year, good win. They beat them by 27 points. Okay, but since the Florida loss, the last 4 weeks they've had 2 games postponed, and they've beaten 2 of the crappier teams in the SEC this year. So no, I don't agree with where Georgia is right now, and that's why. Missouri being a home dog. I mean, I didn't pick this game for my 5 pick segment coming up, but this game's fascinating. It really is. On paper, I mean, again, the matchup predictor from ESPN has 83% in favor of Georgia. That's fine. That's fine. But I find it really fascinating that you look at the passing leaders and rushing leaders. Both these teams, and is Missouri's offense better? Seriously, is Missouri's offense better than Georgia's? Georgia finally made the switch to JT Daniels at quarterback. Finally. He was the reason why they just beat Mississippi State by 7 points and put up 31. The former USC quarterback, JT Daniels. So they're going to roll with him, but it's kind of bad. It's kind of Basilek better? Basilek has over 2,000 yards this year, 5 touchdowns. Nothing too impressive, but Larry Roundtree, I'll tell you what, Larry Roundtree might be playing better than Zamir White. Zamir White is the more heralded college prospect here, folks. Larry Roundtree III, Missouri, 835 yards on the ground, 11 touchdowns. I just have a feeling, Missouri might not even win this game outright, but the fact that they're nearly a 2-touchdown dog at home, and it's just pointing me in the direction of Missouri's going to make this game very interesting and very close. They have a stout ground attack. The passing game, forget about it. The passing attacks from both sides. I mean, I know JT Daniels is the better quarterback than probably anybody on the field now on Georgia's roster or Missouri's roster, but let's have the passing games cancel each other out here. The ground game is in the favor of Missouri right now. Right now, I prefer Larry Roundtree to Zamir White. If Missouri keeps this on the ground all game, folks, This is one of those old school, tough, whoever wins the line of scrimmage, we're going to run the ball a lot in this game. Missouri can make this close, folks. I'm telling you, watch out for that game. Watch out for Georgia, Missouri. Over-runs are 55.5. 54.5 with some markets. Over-under I can't feel out right now, but I don't know. Missouri plus 13. It's very enticing. Missouri, and actually one outlet has it now minus 11.5 against Georgia, so you know where the money's going. This opened at minus 13 for Georgia. It's pretty much stagnant across the board. DraftKings has it at 13.5. William Hill at 13, so it's pretty much stayed at 13. But some of the money's going towards Missouri. Watch out for that. Missouri, folks, I'm telling you, plus 13. I'm not too confident in making one of my picks this week, but it's a very intriguing game. Just something to keep an eye on as we move forward today. Other things going on in the top 25, we mentioned before Northwestern hosting Illinois, which is ridiculous because they have to play the Big Ten title game next week, and Ohio State has 2 weeks off, but, whatever. Colorado, number 21 in the country, and if you care about the Pac-12 this year, they're 4-0. They host Utah. Colorado's only a 2.5-point favorite because who could predict the Pac-12 right now? Coastal Carolina, fresh off that huge win over BYU last week, and it sucks that the group of 5 is still probably not going to get a team in the top 4 because even if Cincinnati's undefeated, are they going to be better than 8, maybe 7, maybe 6? They're not getting to the top 4, unfortunately, at this point, unless there's total chaos in front of them. Coastal Carolina, meanwhile, 10-0, 7 on the Sun Belt. They have Troy this week. They're rolling, so I like Coastal Carolina a lot. We had them last week. That was actually our only winner last week, folks. 1-4 last week. We're now 28-30-2 on the year. But Coastal Carolina was a 15-point favorite at open against Troy. They're now 13.5, so that's something to look out for. I don't know. They could cover. It's on the road, but a tough game. Miami, North Carolina, we'll talk about in our pick segment as well. Let's see what else we got. We mentioned Wisconsin and Iowa in the previous segment about the Big Ten hierarchy here, but that is an intriguing game. Unfortunately for Iowa, they can't really do anything about their future, the conference title. They're a 3-point favorite at home. That's what it opened up, folks. But guess where it is now? Wisconsin's minus 2.5. It ranges from 1.5 to 2.5. Wisconsin's on the favorite. All the money's going to Iowa, so keep an eye out for that trend for 3:30. Despite the fact that Iowa is 5-2 and has the advantage, now they're an underdog, and we're going to be picking that game in the pick segment coming up. As again, it was really interesting the fact that Iowa opened up as the favorite, and now Wisconsin it's moved to 2. It's moved to 2, 2.5 in some markets. Let's take a look at it. Let's get an update on that Florida line. So we marked it down as 23 opening the week, and yeah, it's pretty much across the board 23 and 23.5. So that's pretty much just about right. So the money really hasn't moved on Florida. Oklahoma State dropped to 22, but they are a 5.5-point favorite on the road against Baylor. I don't know if they make it Baylor. They stink, but then they don't. They're probably. They're one of the most intriguing 2-6 teams I've seen ever. They're 2-6. They're a bettor's nightmare. Texas, they lose by 11. TCU, they lose by 10. Iowa State, lose by 7. Texas Tech, lose by 1. They beat Kansas State by 1 point. And they lost to Oklahoma by 13. So I don't know where to go with them. Over-unders, spreads. Baylor's a bettor's nightmare this year, as they have been for us this year. Other top 25 action, USC, UCLA, big game. Oh, this reminds me, folks, just real quick before we get a break in and then go to our pick segment coming up. And by the way, San Diego State plays BYU at 10 o'clock tonight as well. BYU is hosting. So really, USC, UCLA is the last game we'll focus on. How about this? Pete Tamble of Yahoo Sports reported the other night that the Rose Bowl could look for a different venue. Seriously, the Rose Bowl could look at an alternate site for the game due to the COVID restrictions in California. Now, granted, the Rose Bowl has played games this year at the Rose Bowl for UCLA and other Pac-12 games. And they're scheduled to still play at, as far as I know, they're going to play at the Rose Bowl for USC, UCLA. But if these restrictions in place are this bad post-Christmas, and don't forget, the Rose Bowl is a college football playoff semifinal game this year, folks. The Rose Bowl is trying to work with the city to get at least the players' families out to the Rose Bowl, socially distance them and, spread them out in the stadium. They're trying to do that, right? But California is not biting. So Pete Thamel suggested that Dallas, where the Cowboys play, Cowboys Stadium could be a possible solution. But can you imagine? There's not too much to report yet, other than it's kind of speculation, and there are whispers about it right now. God forbid, as the expression goes, crap hits the fan. We can't say the other word on radio. If that's what happens, can you imagine putting the Rose Bowl in Jerry World or somewhere else? The Rose Bowl hasn't been anywhere else since 1942, when Duke won the Rose Bowl. I mean, 1942, when Duke was in the Rose Bowl, 1942. That's the last time it was moved, and went from California all the way to Duke. That's bizarre. 1942, and the reason why? Sorry, Oregon State defeated Duke. Take that back. But it was played in North Carolina. That was during World War II. But can you imagine imagine that Rose Bowl logo in Cowboy Stadium, in Jerry World, smack down the middle. No Rose Parade, no epic sunset as the game starts at 5:00, and the granddaddy of them all. You get that epic sunset, the sunlight beaming onto the field, the colors of that game, the pageantry. Imagine a Jerry World in a dome, open roof, I guess. Come on, that'd be horrendous for the seeing eye, at least. But at least the game will happen. At least the game would happen in that aspect. All right, we're going to step aside and take a quick break. On the other side, we'll get into my 5 picks of the week. 28, 30, and 2 on the year. We got to get back over 500, folks. We had a terrible week last week. Coastal Carolina, our only winner. Meanwhile, Kansas State let us down. Florida let us down. Purdue let us down. And my Rutgers Scarlet Knights let us down. They could not cover the 12.5 against Penn State last week. Oh, that stung. All right, we'll take a break. See you on the other side. College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490, Sports Betting Radio.
Now back to College Football Pick'em with Nick Kosko, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Final segment of the show, College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. We are presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, as always, located inside the Attilas Gym in Egg Harbor Township. Check out harborjiujitsu.com. Follow them on Instagram and give them a like on Facebook as well. Follow me on Twitter at Nick Kosko59, NickKosko59. Follow the station as well at 1490 Sports Bet. All right, picks time. Bit of a more rapid fire segment here this morning. So we're going to start out with Wake Forest and Louisville, folks. And I'll tell you what, are you ready? You ready for some good old-fashioned ACC football? As Wake Forest, plus 1.5. Plus 1.5. What do we do with Louisville? Good old Louisville. I've mentioned before this season how the Cardinals they're not what they're supposed to be. They're not there. Malik Cunningham, you would think a quarterback like him is going to be the big difference maker on this offense. Sure. 2,400 yards, 18 touchdowns, but he's got 12 picks. 12 picks. He already broke last year's yardage total. I mean, granted, he was 112 of 179 last year. This year's 179 of 282, so he's throwing the ball a lot more. But he's turned the ball over more as well. I mean, Louisville is just fascinating, and they're more concerned about Scott Satterfield right now because he was interviewing for other jobs, and obviously now he has to apologize for interviewing for other jobs, and that's because he's staying. I mean, it's bizarre. So don't get me wrong, Malik Cunningham is probably the lone positive on this team on a 3-7 football team. He has almost 600 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns as well. But guess what? To me, there's too much of a mess, and Wake Forest has kind of picked it up a little bit as of late. So the fact that this is almost a pick'em game, it's plus 1.5. And they're on the road, but, I mean, what really is a road game this year for most of these schools without any fans or very limited fans? So I'm going to take a chance here and go with Wake Forest, plus 1.5 on the road. Next game, Army, Navy. Yes, folks, this is the game. the game of the weekend. Usually it has the whole weekend to themselves, but gotta make an exception. It's 2020. So I really weighed this game, and I talked to Rich about this on Back Your Play on Wednesday, and of course Rich Quinones, our esteemed host of Back Your Play, Tuesdays and Wednesdays 4 to 6 on this station. I talked to him about this on Wednesday. I was really weighing on what to do with this game. I saw the +7 from Navy. I'm like, oh, that's not that bad. I would probably take that. Both teams are very ground-oriented. Army's owned the series as of late, but, Army really hasn't played anybody this year anyway. Navy really hasn't played anybody, so where do we really go from here? And that's a big spread. But then I thought about this. Army's only 3 wins. Tulane, Temple, East Carolina. Not good wins. Their last 2 games, by the way, they lost to Tulsa, number 24 in the country. That's one of their conference opponents, considering Navy's in the American Conference. Lost to 19-6, and they lost to Memphis 10-7. So they're not scoring. They had 3 games postponed. They made up the game against again, they made up 2 of them, Tulsa and Memphis. But they went 3 weeks in a row without playing, and they've scored a combined 13 points in the last 2 weeks. Army, meanwhile, while not really playing anybody this year in a 7-2 game, in the 7-2 season, they have been scoring. The only times they really didn't score were the loss to Cincinnati, only scored 10 points. They beat Citadel. I can't believe they only beat Citadel 14-9. And they lost to Tulane 38-12. Only scored 12 points. Other than that, this team is scoring at minimum 28 points a game. They put up 55 this year, 42, 37. To name a couple of scores. 49, 28 last week. I like the way Army plays. The Army and Navy both play very similarly, of course, with the triple option offenses, but Army scores a lot more. And the fact that this game is also at West Point, by the way, no neutral site, no Philly, no Baltimore. West Point this year, because that way they have some semblance of a crowd, and it just worked out better for both service academies. So going with Army, -7 in the Army-Navy game. So go Army, beat Navy by more than 7, please. North Carolina at Miami is the next game. Miami was a 3-point favorite when we saw this one earlier in the week. This is a big game in terms of ACC implications. Does not mean anything for the conference title game, but means something for the rankings and a possible New Year's 6 bowl berth for especially the Miami Hurricanes, who are a top 10 team at the moment. So right now, it opened at 3. I believe it is still 3. Any last-minute movement? No. 3 pretty much across the board. One book has it at -1.5, but we're keeping it 3, folks. We're keeping it fair here. Because I'm going to pick Miami, -3, at home against North Carolina. And I never thought I would say this at the beginning of the year, but I am going to go with Derek King at quarterback over Sam Howell, the North Carolina quarterback. I thought Sam Howell was going to be a bona fide Heisman contender this year, and he's the furthest thing from it. Now, is he playing bad? No, he's not playing bad, but he's not in the Heisman running like a Mac Jones, a Kyle Trask, a Zach Wilson, or even a Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields. He's not on that level. He's not on that level despite a fantastic freshman season. He's playing well this year. Don't get me wrong. Sam Howell is playing some pretty darn good football this year. 3,100 yards, 26 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I feel like we're not talking about him enough, actually, in terms of the Heisman race. But he's not playing at a Kyle Trask level. He's not playing at a Mac Jones level. Plus, his team is number 17 in the country compared to Florida and Alabama. And Justin Fields with Ohio State, or even a Trevor Lawrence who's out of it now, or a Zach Wilson who's just going off for BYU. So, but I'm going to take Derek King right now. They're at home in Miami. Miami's only lost to Clemson this year. They've won a lot of close games, and I feel like they have that mojo to win this close game. This is one of my favorite games of the week. So, it's going to be fun. It's going to be intriguing. 3:30 ABC special, but I like the way Miami's playing right now, and I think they're going to edge out North Carolina. And the fact that the line is only by a field goal right now, I think this will be more of a, along the lines of a 31-27 game, or a 34-30 game, 34-28, something like that, where they just cover. So I am going to roll with Miami here, -3 over North Carolina. Wisconsin, Iowa, we mentioned it before. Iowa opened up as a favorite in this game earlier in the week, but we got it at +1 back on Wednesday, and it stayed like that for a while. And now, as we mentioned in the previous segment, might be a little different, folks. That line is moving way towards Wisconsin. It is now 2. So Iowa was -3 to start the week. They are now +2. So we are going to make a note of that. It is going to be now +2 for Iowa, and we are still going to take that. It was basically a pick 'em. I thought Iowa was going to win outright anyway. I still think they will at 3:30 today. So we're going to roll with the Hawkeyes, Kirk Ferentz and company. Wisconsin, great start to the year. They've been vastly affected by COVID this year. Graham Mertz, maybe not as good as we thought in that first game. He's still a decent quarterback, but the way Iowa's playing, winning 5 in a row, now they're +2 at home. I mean, give me the Hawkeyes. Give me the Hawkeyes at home, +2 over Wisconsin. LSU, Florida, our final game here this weekend, folks. And this is where I'm going to take a big chance. And Florida let us down last week, only beating Tennessee by 12 and not more than 17.5. So now they're 23-point favorites over LSU. And I mentioned before how much of a dumpster fire LSU is this year. That defense is horrendous. If this is a team that Florida cannot pick apart offensively and destroy that Bo Pelini defense, I don't know. I mean, are they going to be able to beat Alabama? I don't know. So take care of business today, Florida. Beat this team by 35. Get me a win. I like Florida -23 at home. Kyle Trask has 38 touchdowns this year. I expect him to throw 5 more today. 5 more. He'll have 43 by the end of the day. Mark it down. Book it. Florida -23. All right, quick recap. Wake Forest +1.5. Army -7. Miami -3, Iowa +2, and Florida -23. That's our big bet of the day. So we're going to go with those 5 games this week. We're 28, 30, and 2 on the year. Let's get back over 500 for the following weekend as we head into conference championship week next week. And that's going to be a great weekend, folks. But there's still some intriguing stuff going on today, including the games that we are picking. So that's our betting interest this week. So we're going to roll with that. That's it for me. We'll see you next week. Enjoy the games today, folks. I am Nick Kosko saying so long. Of course, follow us on Twitter at NickKosko59 and, of course, at 1490 SportsBet. This has been your latest edition of College Football Pick'em on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu.